I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Like to make
If
it.
you baked that just to get my heart racing, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, it's really quiet.
I know. I was like, please. How are you?
Good. I just got my new 2023 turtlenecks in.
I was just gonna say you look very fall.
Well, I tried. It's real thin and it's very cold in my house, so I can wear it.
There you go.
And I
Just
love
pretend.
your new space.
Thank you. I have been relocated and I am
Yes.
excited about that.
You look very coastal grandma to me.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm I'm hoping that if the coastal part means weather that's better, then great.
It's been a little bit better.
Yes.
Hey, Emily. Oh, she disappeared.
Yeah. She's connecting to audio though, so there is promise. Hello from Victoria, Texas. Hi, how are you, Emily?
Oh,
So well. How are you two?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so thrilled. Thanks for choosing my book.
Yes. Now, are you located in Oklahoma?
I'm currently in Los Angeles.
Okay.
I have a book tour stop tomorrow at a store here, and I lived
with
here.
Laura Tremaine.
Yeah, with Laura.
Fun.
Lived here for a while, so I have a good community here. But I currently live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So
Oh, that
living in
sounds
so many
wonderful.
places is really good as a writer. You get a lot of
Yes.
different ideas of what America is in your imagination. So I can't
I
go.
was
nice.
in Cambridge, Massachusetts about 24 hours ago.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Yes.
she's a jet setter.
We went to Maine, but we started off in Boston. So
Oh, nice.
yeah.
And that's how I've gone to Maine before, is to fly into Boston and then just drive. Did that what you did?
Yes.
Yes.
I would recommend probably next time. I think we're going to fly into Bangor, but
Okay.
yeah, but all the leaves are already changing. It's so pretty.
Oh my gosh. We are, of course, we had it's like we have a suggestion of fall today in Texas. Like it's like the weather's like
fall number one.
Yes.
That's why I'm
fall.
wearing a turtleneck. I'm welcoming.
I know. I picked up my son from school and he goes, "Are you wearing a sweater?" And I was like, I mean, yeah, trying. We were supposed to get, originally we were supposed to get rain here and then the high was going to be like in the 80s. So I was like, Burr, I'm going to put a sweater on for this.
Fantastic.
Yes.
I feel I've become, I don't know, sort of the opposite. When I lived in Oklahoma and Texas, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for it to cool off. But now that I live in a place where it's cold most of the year, like I almost like don't feel fully satisfied if it hasn't been like over 100 for a few weeks, which it just doesn't happen. It doesn't get that hot. And when it does, people freak out.
Right.
So I get a little grief, when the colors start to change at the end of August. Just like, oh, really? We're doing this right now?
Right now.
I will say when I was in Maine, they were having a heat wave, of course.
Oh gosh.
But it was like, 83 and everyone was excited that it was so hot. I'm like,
this is not what I ordered.
Yeah. 50 and rain is what I would have hoped for. But
yes, totally.
Playing.
We can, I guess, start. It's almost 7. We'll have a minute to 7. But I want to introduce myself, Emily. I'm Allison Frenzel, one of the owners here at Fabled. This is not Fabled. This is my house. Fabled is a little crazy to do the Zoom, so I've resorted to coming here.
Yeah, and I know we've talked over the interwebs. Elizabeth Thornhill, book buyer. So very, very excited. And I'm so excited that it was just kind of serendipitous that Laura came to the store right when I finished the arc. And I was like, I have a little surprise for you, a book that I know you would love, but also same hometown.
That is very rare. I'm so excited to meet her tomorrow.
She is so much fun. I mean,
it's great.
It's so great when you host authors and they're just fun. Like they're you just don't even worry about them, and she is one of those. Like she's bringing a show. It's going to be so fun. So you will enjoy yourself for sure.
Okay, good. I'm in good hands.
Yes. Yeah. Well, why don't we go ahead and start? We had a lot of people sign up for this. Like how many? I didn't see the last number. Kai, our communications manager, she's in the chat. I think it was over
138 at 138 at last.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we record this. So if not everybody's here, they will watch it later. We will upload it to our YouTube channel as well. Yes, Kai said 138. And so if anybody out there can't listen to the whole thing, don't worry. You'll get a link tomorrow evening in your inbox. It sometimes comes earlier. I don't know what Zoom's schedule is. I wish I did, but you'll get a link at some point.
You can't rush
that will have this. Yes. Oh, fun. We have people from all over. That's amazing.
Oh, I want to read this. Once I start talking, I won't look at it.
I know it's very hard to pay
Florida,
attention.
Richmond, Colorado, Texas, Charlottesville. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. You guys
I feel like
influence. Iowa, Michigan. I'm losing my mind here. This is amazing.
We have the best customers that from all over, and I feel like we have a community that's just so supportive and kind. I see the same names over and over again too with our book clubs, which is so fun to do that.
This is so cool to see. I'm totally floored. We should just have a map here, where you can.
Oh, I know. That's
see if we get all 50 states.
Well, we actually will have people from Ireland and Australia who
yes,
well,
who will come on it's amazing to me.
The magic of computers.
It is. I know. I think one of the good things come out of COVID is we are very Zoom centric now. So
yeah. Were you doing this before COVID or?
This is kind of how we actually started. We were like a baby business right when COVID started. We opened up August of 2019. Wow. And then the pandemic happened. And then there was a lot. I feel like there was like a week or two I was just stunned where I was like, are you kidding me? This is what's happening. And we just started this business. But I always tell people it almost was a benefit that we were new because we were scrappy, because we weren't like an established business. It was like, oh, I don't know. We were like, oh, let's do this. Who knows? And I felt like a lot of our customers were like, we're going to help you. You're not going to go under. We're going to figure things out, which we couldn't have done it without them ordering stuff from us. And yeah, it was incredible. It was really awesome.
A lot of reading during the pandemic.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like people who have not read in years were like, this is what I'm doing now.
They've run out of ideas. It's time to go back to books.
Yes, which is true. That is a good thing. Another good thing.
Yeah.
But welcome everybody. We are so excited, and we have so many questions for Emily today. I want to introduce myself. If you don't know me, I'm Allison Frenzel. I am one of the owners at Fabled.
Yes, and I'm Elizabeth Barnhill. I'm the book buyer at Fabled.
Yes. And I briefly said we have a link. If you can't join us the whole time, we'll send it to you. We also, at the end of this, will introduce our next book for next month. So stay tuned for that. But also, if you're going to miss it, we will include everything in our email so you will not miss one thing. But yeah, well, I will start with letting Elizabeth introduce Emily.
All right. So Emily Habeck is an alumna of SMU's Meadow School of the Arts, where she received a BFA in theater, as well as Vanderbilt Divinity School and Vanderbilt's Peabody College. She is from Ardmore, Oklahoma. Shark Heart is her first novel. So I have to say, the first time I heard of Shark Heart, I was at Winter Institute, which is the big bookseller conference. And I will never forget the Simon & Schuster rep coming over and saying, okay, hear me out. There's a really fantastic book with the strangest premise. And, typically weird books are not usually my jam, but she really sold it to me. And as soon as I read it, I was like, this is one of my favorite books of the year. It's one I will never forget. And I just knew I wanted so badly to be able to talk to you about it and to really promote it. So it's been an honor to be able to put it in so many people's hands, and can't wait to talk to you tonight about it. So I would like to hear from you. How do you describe Shark Heart?
Oh, and I want to also say spoilers abound. Do not worry. Everyone's read the book.
Oh, I'm free.
Yes, you are free to say whatever you want. So
you wait at least a month so everyone has a chance to read it. So it is a book club for sure.
Okay, great. Well, I think I would describe this book in two ways. I can describe it in the way with animals, which is it's the story of a couple who's recently married, and they soon learn within the course of a year, the husband will transform into a great white shark. And we go back in time and meet Wren's mother, who also becomes an animal. And this is just a very normal thing in the world. And we get to see the way the characters handle transformation and change. So that's like one way. But in my mind, it's really Wren's story. And I see it as a story of a woman's relationship to love and her formative relationships that created her and made her the person that she is. In both real and kind of spiritual or magical ways, depending on what your language is. I really think that we are kind of created by all the people we've ever known. And sometimes those people we never met, they came before us. They are our ancestors. They are the people that our ancestors interacted with. And so I kind of feel like Wren and the characters in this book are kind of an amalgamation of souls and personalities. And so I really see it kind of as a wheel with Wren at the very center, and then kind of the spokes coming off of it, all the relationships that have affected her and made her who she is. And so I think those are the two ways that I think about the book, but I'd also be curious to hear how you see it too.
That's good. That's fun. I know. Well, I feel like whenever Elizabeth and I were talking, because there's like so much depth to this book and so much to like unravel. But when I first talked to Elizabeth and we were getting our questions ready, I was like, we have to start with what the heck? How did you come up with this idea of a man that turns into a great white shark?
You know, I'm really am curious about the nature of ideas myself. It's just like a really like, where do thoughts come from? It's just kind of a, and maybe an existential question that I'll never fully understand.
That's true.
And there's part of me that says, I don't know where this idea came from. And I'm going to start saying that more, because I think there's part of me that just is holding the mystery of all of this, that for whatever reason, I was the person that needed to tell this story. But when I look back at where I was when I started writing this, it kind of starts to make sense. I was living here in Los Angeles, where I am now. I was working in film and TV and story development. And I had a really good life. I was doing work that I loved. But for whatever reason, I just stumbled upon this crisis of meaning. And it was almost just like overnight, I felt different inside. And I began to question everything. And people joke, about going through an existential crisis. But I really think that's what it was. Like, I was really thinking hard about the meaning of work, and especially art, and what my place was in all of it. And so I think I was starting to feel really foreign to myself. Like I was transforming on the inside. And so I think Lewis's transformation into a great white shark was kind of me projecting this feeling that I had, of feeling really other. And I was surrounded by people who were really okay and not having this experience. And I was having those like, why me questions. And through the course of writing this, I moved away from Los Angeles and ended up going to divinity school and studying theology, which is a really hard pivot from Hollywood. But I realized in that place also that the questions that I was having are not only like important, but it was like an honor to have them, that I was like kind of walking into some kind of like primordial path that, speaking of ancestors again, so many people before me have tried to answer these questions and have written about them beautifully. And I now see like those questions as maybe kind of a building block in living a meaningful life. Like, I don't have to answer them. I don't have to know why I'm here or what this all means, but in just living with the mystery, I feel like I can find peace in that. And I was also in that time in divinity school where my perspective on creativity just completely transformed, a lot like Lewis becoming a shark. it was the first time in my life that I wasn't surrounded by a lot of creative people who were vying for commercial success. And I was just in this community of people who were like, what are my gifts? And how do I use those gifts to serve the world and humanity's highest good? And that kind of language was just really new to me. And I started to realize that writing had always been this thing that made me feel better. And what if it could be something that helped others too? And I kind of left with that experience. And yeah, I was writing through that period. And I really kind of see this book as like, I don't know, like an artifact of my own transformation.
Wow.
That's
Well,
awesome.
one of the things that I love about my job, almost more than any other, is really promoting debut authors. I love to do it. I love to help get their art into the world. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like for you to be a debut author? What are maybe some surprises along the way, or how are you able to transition into pitching this to a publisher who thought it was a great idea?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm still figuring out how I feel, I think. Yeah, so the first step when you have a book and you're a debut author, you write the whole book and then you send it out to agents, and it's called querying. And you write kind of a letter that explains what the book is and who you are. And you hope that the agent that you're emailing on the other end is like, yay, I would love to read, 50 pages or the whole manuscript. And so through that process, I found a wonderful agent who totally got this book. And she was the one, and her belief in this book and belief in me got me in the door with an amazing editor and publishing house. So I really think one of the most surprising things about the publishing journey is just the team that I have. And there are more people involved than I ever imagined possible. And it's really cool just to have all these people that have different skills they're bringing to the table, who also really believe in my book and in me. That's just a really wild experience, especially after so much rejection that comes with this path, both with this project and also with previous ones. So yeah, and I think I'm still figuring out like what it means to be an author. I know this sounds really obvious, but it's kind of shocking to me that people are reading it. Like
Yeah.
people I don't know are reading it. I'm like, wow, like that is such a wild experience that people can walk around in my mind and these thoughts that I had at one time. And I'm also realizing that people bring to the book like exactly where they're at. And that to me is just completely fascinating. I mean, and maybe it's true in all types of human communication that we kind of meet the work with what we have and where we are. So that's been really cool too, to hear readers express to me things in the book that I did not see myself.
Yeah,
That has to be mind blowing.
Absolutely.
You're like, oh, yes, of course I meant that.
I'm like,
Exactly.
yeah, that's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely those three themes.
I think one thing that always stuck with me is another author told me once, this book was mine. It belonged to me. And when it's published, it belongs to everyone else. And what a surreal experience that is.
Yeah, exactly. I think I let go of it a long time ago. And I think it's still mine in a way. I still feel like I'm carrying the energies of the characters around because they're part of me. I think like Wren and Lewis represent this tension I wrestle with in my personality. Maybe I always will, but I have characteristics of Lewis where, I mean, I am the girl who wrote the shark book, and
Right.
That's kind of like unbounding creativity and imagination. But then I also have a really practical side. And yeah, I think I can be really anxious about the future, and my mind can take me to some pretty crazy ideas about what's going to happen. And then when I step outside of that, I'm like, oh, okay, none of these things are real. And so I think they both represent this tension in my personality. And I think in writing them, I got to understand those parts a little better, and writing them as separate people and how they fit together, how they actually complement one another. And I think one of the comments that I've gotten from people is that, oh, their opposites attract, but I really don't feel that way because I have those two parts within me. And I don't know how they work in my own self, but I can see how they work with Lewis and Wren. And so that's kind of a psychological exercise. In hindsight, that was a really, I don't know, illuminating thing to realize about myself through the process.
That has to feel out too, like just to be putting so much of yourself on paper, then releasing it to the world, then everybody reads it. It has to feel kind of exposing.
Oh yeah, it is totally vulnerable. I was reading Brene Brown's latest book, Atlas to the Heart, and it's such a beautiful book, but she has that chapter on vulnerability. And I remember looking at it right before the book came out, and I was like, oh, that's exactly what this is. It's just, it comes with doing something new too.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said like, oh, soak this up. You know, it's your debut. You can only have your debut once. But part of me is like, I'll be able to soak it up when I've done this before. It's yeah. So anyway, that's a long aside to, yeah, it is so surreal.
I'd love to talk about the format of the book, because with you being a debut author, I was telling a couple of my staff members, we were talking about this book today, and they knew the premise because we've talked about it, loving it and reading it. And I talked about how different the book is, as far as like sometimes there'll be a couple paragraphs on one page, and then some page will be going in the past, and then some has a few sentences. And just what we know about the book industry, like sometimes there are these like hard and fast rules that whether they actually exist, they don't. Like some people say that you can't have a debut book if it's going to go back in time, if it's two perspective going back in time. I don't know who made that rule up. I've always heard it, but I was like, no, this book is breaking all these rules, and a debut author is so fascinated, and especially whenever when Lewis goes into the ocean, I was like, wait, we have half of the book left. Like that surprised me, because it really felt like this final, the end situation. And I just wondered, like, as far as when you're writing it, were you always intending it to have that format of just really different, or did you get pushback from your agent or the publisher or anything like that?
Yeah, no, my agent and publisher liked the how I structured it in the format. And I think my choices came from a very playful place. It was what seemed, and an intuitive place. It seemed in my body like the right way to tell it, because it was easy to write. Whenever I'm working on something and it feels hard, and I mean, there are moments when writing is hard, but when it feels like a chore, then it's usually not the right direction. And I think I've learned that in different creative avenues. And so the fact that this just felt exciting as I was working on it this way meant to me that I was going in the right direction. And I was also writing it for me, like through this time. And so it didn't need to play by the rules, so to speak. And I did do a very like kind of intense undergraduate program in theater and acting. And I left that program with so much stuff in my head. It was like hard to do it all at once. And I think it really kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, ruined me. Like I couldn't find joy in it anymore, because I have that Wren part of me that really wants to do things right. So I think I've really protected myself from dogmatic voices of right. people in literature who say this is what a book is. I think about how everything is all made up.
Totally.
All of our human constructs are made up. So it's not like gravity. Like there's no ultimate way that art should be made. And I feel that. And of course, you know, I think along the way, like there are people who are like, this is not for me. Like I want a book that feels like a format that I recognize. And I totally get that. That's totally a reasonable response. But I felt like I was really true to myself, and also my life at that time. Like I was working and going to school, And sometimes the short passages like came out of this day where I'd be like going all day, and I'd get home and have that kind of creative spark to write, but I was so exhausted. And so I'd be like, okay, like I know I want to get the character from point like A to B. And I just happened to do it in a paragraph because that's how much time I had. And a lot of those original sections like that like remained. But obviously like through rewriting, sometimes it's hard to tell like what was in the first draft and what wasn't.
I personally felt like the format was so great for such profound grief that the characters were going through, and it lightened it up. It kind of, I feel like it brought the reader to be able to like sit back a little bit and not need a therapy session afterwards. I mean, maybe people did, but it kept it light. It kept it like everyone goes through something like this where you're losing someone in some way.
Right.
So that's gonna be one thing where I felt like it was purposeful. Whether it was purposeful for you, you can say, of course, yes.
Of course,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes, always.
And I always love in a book where the construct helps to kind of spur the emotional impact more. And it wasn't just the words, it was the visual. And I have encouraged people, I'm a huge audiobook person, but I have told people don't listen to this one. And I don't know if anyone has talked to you about that.
Someone just mentioned that in the chat that they told someone, you need to read this, The Physical Coffee.
Yeah, totally.
And even a Kindle, I'm not sure if that would even an e-reader be as impactful as a physical book. So we always like that at bookstores.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always preferred.
Unless you have a Libro account.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the grief in the medical aspect. I don't know if you know this, but I was in the medical field for 20 years before I became a book buyer. And so that was something that really meant a lot to me in this book. And there's a lot of, the grief is very omnipresent, and not only the loss of a loved one, but also the loss of abilities. How did you do research on that? And even did you kind of have in mind a degenerative disease that sort of looked like morphing into animals?
Yeah. And there is definitely Alzheimer's and dementia in my family, but that was like on the periphery for me. I think I was really like inside the characters. And when people ask me if I thought that writing this was weird, and I mean, I didn't really think it was weird until people started asking me if it was weird. And I think that's just because I just believed their hearts and what they were going through. Like I kind of treated it like I would if I was playing them in a play, like my acting background. I sort of like got in their head. So I wasn't like really concerned with the technical aspects of the illness. I felt like if I'm feeling something when I'm working on this, I think a reader will believe it. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I think also like I said earlier, I was just feeling this like complete loss of identity and self. I felt like the ground beneath me was unstable. And so I think it was like from that place that I was able to kind of grasp this physical disease. And I also think even though Wren doesn't transform into an animal, that she has just as much of a transformation on the inside. And maybe that was closer to what I went through, that kind of arc where the core components are the same of who I was and who Wren was. But we kind of emerged on the other side of this transformation a little different, a little more accepting because of it. But yeah, it's been so incredible what readers have messaged me, like what they see in the transformation about their own lives, like everything from like gender identity to a partner's political affiliations to ALS to cancer to mental illness, addiction. I had no idea that it would resonate in that many ways. It
means you're a very talented writer.
Thank you.
For sure. I'm glad that you mentioned that you attended a divinity school, because I was reading your bio the other day and that kind of came out because I started thinking about the characters and their view of hope, either lack of it or even afterlife. I especially thought about Tiny Pregnant Woman too. Did your education there kind of influence how you put that in the story, or I'll let you talk. But
Yeah.
yes, I was interested to hear about that.
For sure. I think the hope is a part of me. I think that has been, even when I'm in the worst of ways, I think like my baseline feeling is always like hope and happiness. I remember a few years ago, I was just going through a stressful time and I was venting to a friend, and at the end of the phone call, I was like, but I'm really happy overall. And she was just like, what do you mean? But it was kind of like this, like the seed of my being was okay. And so I think that just comes from me. And I think stories give me hope. I think the creative process gives me hope. I think a lot of what, at least the way I make meaning of religion and spirituality, is that human beings need stories to ground us. We need frameworks that make sense, and ways to understand the unimaginable. And so I look to stories for hope, for sure.
Great.
All right, another slight medical question that one of the things I really took away from this was the idea of being a patient and what a patient's experience is with an illness versus what the caregiver is experiencing. And I, again, for 20 years had very, very specific relationships with both sides of that. And I've actually spent time thinking, during specific illnesses, would I rather be the patient or the caregiver? And that really resonated with me with Shark Heart. Do you think one of those was easier to write for you, the patient or the caregiver? How did you approach that?
Oh, wow. I love that question. Both are really hard. I think in my life, I'm a little bit of a better caretaker. And I think that's probably just because of our society's conditioning a little bit for women. I am very lucky and I have a partner who really loves to take care of me and like kind of sees my needs before I even do. In really tangible ways. Like sometimes I live in a tower house, like a townhouse, and each floor is a different room, and the laundry happens to be in the basement and the bedroom is on the very first floor. And so one of my least favorite things to do is to carry the laundry all the way up the stairs. I don't know why I'm telling you guys this, but he'll sometimes
We're with you.
He'll sometimes bring carry the laundry up with and it just amazes me. Like, I'm just like, and it's honestly like hard to receive. I'm like, you have done this for me. Like, yes, this horrible thing, carrying my laundry up the stairs. But yeah, I think it's really hard for me to receive. And I can imagine for anybody who's like used to being able to live their lives like with complete mobility, to all of a sudden not be able to do basic things. And I think about that a lot with aging too, and the way our culture kind of, I don't know, puts away our elders. It's like we're kind of, once capitalism is done with us, we're
Right.
somehow like not fully human. And that's a particular grief as well that I haven't experienced yet because I'm in my 30s. But I can imagine that also would be like, a Shark Heart like transformation where all of a sudden all these things you've been able to do, the driving and the eating and the dressing, are maybe not as successful.
Right. So true. I'd love to talk about the play Our Town, which now you mentioned like theater. I'm like, oh, that starts to make sense. Some people have mentioned that it's interesting that Our Town is in your book, and it's also in Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. Crazy. I actually even looked up the last, is it monologue or soliloquy? of Emily, the very end, what she says.
Yeah, the take me back to my grave passage.
I think early she's saying goodbye to everything too.
Yeah, oh, the goodbye. Yeah.
And I was just thought of Lewis and just was
Yeah.
like, well, this is actually so heartbreaking with this book.
Right.
Anyways, did you I mean, is there a special significance that Our Town has for you personally, or was that an easy play to include and for people to make that connection?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to speak to the Ann Patchett coincidence. That is just like one of the wildest things. Like,
It really is
we
funny.
both have an Our Town book come out like the same month. If I ever meet her, I don't know, I'll probably say something really stupid and nervous.
You'd be like, great,
And I'll be
Mom.
like, we both wrote an Our Town book.
Everyone loves it though. It's kind of been a fun, everyone's
Yeah.
like, it's such a neat
I'm
coincidence.
so glad because people are
Yeah.
going to get introduced to that amazing play. And I was first introduced to it. I had to be like 9, 10, maybe. I was doing community theater and I played Rebecca Gibbs, and I had no idea what the play was about on a existential or spiritual or even a human level. And I remember picking it up years later in college and being like, oh, wow, like this is really a lot.
Yeah.
And then I've done that every few years, and it's something that just continues to deepen with me, deepen with time. And I think the place where I'm at with Our Town now is that it's all about the tactile realities. Like, it's interesting that if you ever see the play or read the stage directions, it says like that there's no props. It's like it's this completely bare stage, and yet the play is about all of the sensory experiences of life. I mean, that's a big element of it. It's all the things, and not in a materialistic way. I think sometimes connecting to like the sights and the sounds and the tastes and the smells really bring me into the moment and make me feel a little less scared about the future or about losing. So I think it's just one thing that will just kind of follow me around. And it was throughout my life, and it was amazing to contact the estate of Thornton Wilder and ask for permission, and they were so lovely, and they didn't mention.
That's funny. I wonder if they were like, again, another
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, they had to approve it. Like I sent the passages that I was planning on using, and was a little nervous because at that point I was like, I don't think my book really works without this.
Without it.
I'm
I
really
think it's
grateful.
inspired a lot of people to read it. That's what I keep hearing is they love the coincidence, and like maybe the universe is saying it's time to read Our Town.
Yes.
So it's always time to read Our Town. It's been a few years since I've seen it like on the stage, but it's beautiful. If you ever have a chance, I feel like it's a play that whatever the experience or the qualities of the actors or the production, the words just lift everybody up. I don't think there's such a thing as a bad Our Town.
My daughter is in theater, so I will have to suggest that be their next play.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that'd be amazing.
And then Elizabeth, you can come watch.
I'll come watch. Yes. I'll bring a book. Okay, so I'm constantly examining my own reading life and what I like and what I'm drawn to. And typically sci-fi fantasy is my least favorite genre. I'm a more concrete reader and thinker. However, I have found that dystopian / fantasy, whatever you want to call it, books that I really, really love are ones where everything is normal, everything feels grounded in reality, except one big aspect.
Yeah.
In this case, it's the animal mutation. So do you like that genre too? Or are there other books like that you gravitate toward, or was it just sort of a neat coincidence that it happens to be something I love?
Our tastes really align. I'm the same way. I don't really read a lot of things with heavy world building.
World building, yes.
But again, if it's world building that I can connect to this reality, I think part of it is I go to reading to relax, and if it feels like a lot to keep track of, I just can't.
Totally. Like if you have to learn a new currency or something.
Yes,
like
exactly.
That.
Oh, it's like there's a religion here that is,
Right.
I just recently read Dune, so which was beautiful. It was an exception to the rules, and I was way behind on that. But yeah, I'm very similar to you in that way. But I think for me, at least, this has been called so many things. It's been called, let me see if I can remember all the things. It's been called speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, literary fiction, magical realism, dystopian. Yeah, I feel at home in magical realism. I think magic is such a big, is a kind of a big umbrella term to me. And I think sometimes it's easier to talk about reality through something that is not real. I think because there is this natural absurdity to a man becoming a shark, it allowed me to go deeper into my feelings and in my heart about how I feel about loss and change. I think if it had been too real, something that I know, I would have projected a lot of my own stuff onto it. And so kind of having this whimsical canvas to paint on really allowed me to get closer to the raw emotions of it, if that makes sense.
I mean, even the mother, the swimmer, I can't remember, her name escapes me at the moment.
Oh, tiny pregnant woman. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess she doesn't have a name. But the dangers of pregnancy. I mean, there was really just feeling that too, this ominous, what's going to happen to her. That really struck me as well. But along those lines, you mentioned Dune, or what are some other either authors or books that inspire you or that you love, or maybe ones that you'd want to put on the radar of our listeners?
Yeah. Oh, this is all, I should have prepared for this because I always just be like, okay. So I'm
If
reading,
you ask me, I'd be the same way.
I can't pick a favorite book. It really just changes with wherever I'm at. But I'm currently reading Whale Fall by Daniel Kraus, I think is how you say his name. And it really feels like a cousin to Shark Heart. It is also kind of propulsive and short chapters. And it is about a relationship between a father and a son. So it has the kind of parental child dynamics and also has dual perspectives and flashbacks in time. But basically, do you know the premise of this?
Oh, I read it right after Shark Heart.
Oh, you did? Okay. So fill in where I fall off here. So it's hard. I think I can say the hook, right? It's not a terrible spoiler.
No, I think you can.
And
it's like
exploring
the center of the earth, but it's a whale.
Yeah, like in exploring his father's recent death, this young man goes scuba diving and gets swallowed by a whale and has only a certain amount of time before he runs out of oxygen. And so he's just gotten swallowed. That's where I'm at right now. But yeah, I think it would be a nice companion to Shark Heart. Do you agree with that one?
I will just say that Shark Heart was about 30,000 times more wonderful to me.
Oh,
it's not subtle.
Really kind.
Yes, there's lots of intestines and blood and guts and coming. So just prepare.
Okay, it gets gross.
It gets a little gross.
In the blurb, it said scientifically accurate. So yeah, book is not scientific. If you're craving scientific accuracy,
yes, that is really funny.
This is the next book to go to. I also really love this book called Chasing Shadows. It's by Greg Skomel, and he was actually a marine biologist who helped me with the research for Shark Heart. And he has a book out this summer, and it's kind of a memoir it's part memoir, part like layperson's marine biology. And it's about his life's work with great white sharks.
Wonderful.
And I wish I had read that book in doing research, because I think I would have changed some things. He talks about how the great white shark is basically a perfect animal. Like it is incredibly old. It has evolved in such efficient ways. And just like their survival, and they live to be like 70 or 80 years. And kind of the oldness of it. And this, I don't know, that's always just interesting to me when something has endured through so many different eras. And so I think if I were to go back with those details, I would have focused more on how Lewis is actually becoming something amazing. Like he might be grieving what he has, but he's actually becoming this beautiful animal.
Seems very spiritual too, in a way.
Yeah. So I think I'd recommend those two as companions. But in general, I admire all the great American writers right now. Jennifer Egan, George Saunders, and I read a lot of plays too. So yeah.
I will say Starter Villain is another one. I've read several interesting animal books this summer. That one to me was fantastic. And it's also mostly normal, but cats talk, and there's like angry dolphins who are like in the Labor Party, and it's fantastic.
I'm here for that.
John Scalzi comes out September the 19th.
I'm going to write this down. What is it again?
Starter Villain. And look, you're going to laugh so hard when you see the cover.
Okay.
It's a cat who looks like he's in the mafia.
Oh, great. This is amazing. Yeah. Oh, I thought of one last book that I read this summer that I loved. You Can Make This Place Beautiful. The Maggie Smith memoir. It's just so stunning. I'm not surprised, but it was really moving. So those are my faves right now.
Good choices.
Yeah.
I want to backtrack just a little bit because we've had such a good chat. I mean, I think even better than normal. And I wanted to address Diane's question. She said, for me, the aspects of how much control we have and how we battle with accepting rang strongly through the book. There were parts around free will and freedom in there too. I hope Emily can talk about that too, maybe. Does it tie back to the idea of being made of who came before or surround us? And then Lorraine also was like, yes, I want to hear more about that. And she said, I'd love to hear about regarding how much we're made by the people we encounter and those that our ancestors have encountered. So yeah. So fascinating. Yeah. But wanted to make sure that was addressed.
Yeah. Okay. Can you read the question again?
Yes. I think she was talking about like the idea of theme and free will and freedom within the book, and that being a big theme. And does that tie back to where we came from?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's such a deep question. You
can say yes.
I like to believe that we have free will. I know that's a really philosophical question, but I can't, because if we don't have free will, that just means that people who do horrible things are not accountable. And I just can't like hold that. And at the same time, like I can like hold these tensions at the same time. Again, it's probably like the Wren and the Lewis in my brain, but I can hold these opposites. I also think that, there's parts of us that are just made. But I think the alchemy, it's like when you're making a cake, you have like all these ingredients, but you can't distinguish the individual ones, when you're eating the cake. You're not like, oh, I really sense that butter or the egg or whatever. So I think that maybe that's like the alchemy of being a person, is that we kind of become our own substance, and our experiences that we choose also create us. At least that's what I think today. I'll probably say something different in a year.
And that question really, I feel like, represents how much there are different themes that speak to people in this book. Stronger, and that is really special for a book to do that, for sure.
Thank you.
I wanted to also ask about the cover art. I take all the pictures for our social media. Oh, thank you for the visual. And I was really excited about this one because I was like, whatever I'm going to do, it's going to look great. And I think we sell this cute rifle agenda. It matches almost.
I love that brand.
I just put it right underneath. It looked so like it was meant to be.
1, 2.
Yes. Did you have a say in the art? Did they show it to you and you went through several iterations, or how did that work?
I did have a say. I didn't have anything in my head of what I wanted. I think it's probably a debut author not knowing thing. And I was also just going to be really grateful for whatever happened. But they ended up showing me like 14 different proofs. And I remember the Zoom call. It was like, we put them up on the screen, and it was my agent and my editor and my editor's assistant. And we were all just kind of like speechless. They all communicated something different about the book. The artist, Fayen Nguyen, is just, she's just a master. I'm so grateful. yeah, that she created my cover. But our eyes kept going back to the one that we chose. And I was like, the flowers at that point in the cover were kind of just, I don't know, I won't say, I guess like generic garden flowers. You might see it like Lowe's in the garden center. But I was like, this book takes place in a really specific part of the country. Like I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, and yeah, and most of the first part takes place in Dallas. And I'm like, those are specific flowers. Like those are the flowers of the Great Plains. And so I was like, can we incorporate some of the native wildflowers from this area? And they were like, oh yeah, absolutely. Send us pictures. And so I sent my mom out into the yard and she took pictures.
How fun.
Yeah. Like the blue one is the blue bonnet. And
yes, I was just going to ask if there was a blue bonnet on there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've made an Instagram post where I try to identify all of them, but yeah, I was just so proud of it as an object too, just to be able to say that my first book is sort of this, I don't know, picture or portrait of where I grew up. I read this Larry McMurtry quote sometime in the process of promoting this book, where he said that people who are born to the skies of the plains feel like homesick for the sky when they're in forested places. And for me, that has absolutely been true. Like whenever I cannot see the sky or go days, before if I've not seen the horizon, I just start to feel like, I don't know, just a little crunchy, a little off.
A little claustrophobic. I mean, of course, us Texans feel the same way.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah, it's interesting. But then there are definitely forest people. People who just like feel safe in the woods. And I get that too. But I think it's just something about those, like being able to see everything and the clouds moving. And I could go on. I'm pretty basic in my interests. Writing, reading, clouds.
I love thinking about the land and the sea in the picture. I mean, they can't really, flowers can't be underwater. People can't be underwater. Cool. I love that. But you were talking about Dallas, and I must say, I read a lot of books, and hardly any of them are set in Dallas, Texas. So I was so excited that was the setting. And did you decide to, why did you decide to do that versus maybe Oklahoma City or, and I love that it made it so incompatible with the sea because it is so far away from the ocean. So
yeah, I was thinking I guess you can't put a great white shark in the Gulf.
Yeah, no.
She had to go to the Pacific.
Yeah. Well, I went to college in Dallas, and it was a place that I knew. But amidst this like sea of grass and like open sky, Dallas to me like is a concrete jungle, at least, if in the center of it. As soon as you get out into the suburbs, it's different. And I felt like that was a place, well, for one, like practically, Wren has a lot of education and she is going to get a big girl job. And in order to be close to home, like that is the biggest city where she can do her work. And I'm also like, I'm in Los Angeles right now for my book tour. And when I moved from Dallas to LA, I noticed there was this similar quality where it's really easy to be anonymous. And I'm from a small town, so being anonymous is like pretty cool. Like I don't feel lonely about it. Even now, I'm just like, I can go anywhere. Like no one's going to ask me, how my entire family is doing.
Right. Gotta have your makeup on when you go to the store.
Yes.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's like Walmart is the town square. And so I felt like that was a good place for Wren to be close to home, to take care of her mom, but also have this anonymity and be able to start over. And while I was writing it, I also realized that there was this kind of parallel between the Great Plains and like looking out at a field where it's just grass forever, and then also looking out at the ocean's horizon. It kind of evokes a really similar type of feeling in me, at least. Right. And the movement of the grass is very wave-like. And so I felt like there were some parallels there. And I was aware of that while I was writing. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, But
really
less so about, the actual characters, which has been cool to hear when readers point out little things I didn't see before.
Okay, last question for
Yeah.
you. Tell us what you're working on next, if you can.
Yeah. Well, I'm really superstitious. So I won't say specifics, but I am working on another book, and yeah, it's very different from Shark Heart. And I don't know who told me this once. It was a few years ago, but someone said like every few years just presents a new little mystery and like questions about life. And I think that Shark Heart was about a certain chapter of life, and this definitely feels like emotionally, energetically, like a new era. And yeah, I think I'm really questioning what kind of woman I want to be, and honestly just taking in all of this kind
I
of
can't imagine.
to share my work. And yeah, and so it's interesting to write, also knowing now what it's like to have it received. So I don't know. I'm figuring it out. It's very delicate at this point, but I'll be excited to share it with y'all in a couple of years, maybe. We'll see how long it takes.
Well, we will be thrilled to see what's next from you.
Well, thank you.
Cheering you on from Central Texas.
Yes.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you so much for reading my book and just being such amazing supporters. I'm just endlessly grateful.
I love it.
You made it very easy on us, Emily.
Well, if you don't mind, Emily, we're going to announce our book for next month. And I am going to put in the chat, I'm going to let Elizabeth tell you a little bit about it, but I'll put in the chat the sign up link if you would like to sign up. And of course, Emily, if you want to as well, sign up for next month. I thought October 17th. Yes.
Yes, and our book is Mother-Daughter Murder Night by Nina Simon. This is also a debut. It takes place in the marshlands of California, utterly beautiful. And really, there's a murder in it, but it is ultimately the story of 3 generations of women and how they had a fractured relationship, but they're coming back together. So it's kind of a mystery plus. I loved the book. It's a Reese pick. We were pleasantly surprised to hear that. So, and it was our sleuth book this month, which was it's our big mystery box. So if you are a subscriber of the sleuth box, you probably received it a couple of maybe last week. So we would love to have you join us for that. And I know you'll love it. And yeah, this has been a wonderful night. And Emily, tell Laura we said hello from Fabled.
Yes, I will. Thanks so much for making that connection. It's kind of magical.
Fun. I know. Yeah. I was with her. I was like, what is that town that you're from? And she said Ardmore. I'm like, oh, I've got a surprise for you.
I mean, and that's why Elizabeth's so good at her job, that she can remember details and then give someone a book, and then that connection is made so great.
Well, made me happy.
Maybe change the course of history. Who knows what can happen.
I try. I do what I can.
That's right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Emily. And we are cheering you on and hope to see your next piece of work in the shop soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, guys.